police officer looked at me, then at the death certificate in his hand, then back at me again. "Sir," he whispered, "according to the state of Colorado, you're dead." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because less than 3 hours earlier, I'd stepped off a military transport plane after nearly 2 years on an extended overseas assignment with the United States Marine Corps. My military ID was hanging around my neck. My fingerprints were in every federal database. My passport had been scanned less than an hour ago. Yet inside the Willow Creek HOA meeting, a woman stood behind the podium holding an official county death certificate with my name printed across the top. "It is with deep regret," she announced, "that we confirm Staff Sergeant Ethan Brooks died while serving overseas. Since no immediate family has claimed his estate, the HOA board will now vote to transfer his property." One by one, hands went into the air. Every vote brought them closer to stealing my home. Then the meeting room doors swung open. The sound of combat boots echoed across the floor. My deployment bag hit the hardwood with a loud thud. Every head turned toward me. One board member dropped his coffee. Another nearly fell out of his chair. The police officer slowly lowered the death certificate and stared at me as though he'd seen a ghost. The HOA president didn't scream. She didn't move. She simply whispered, "Who are you?" I looked directly into her eyes. "The man you buried alive." Before I tell you how an HOA president convinced an entire county that a living Marine was dead, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing where these stories reach. And if you enjoy stories where justice always catches up with people who abuse their power, subscribe, because this HOA meeting ended with flashing red and blue lights outside the building. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 39 years old. For 18 years, I served as a United States Marine. I've survived enemy fire, rocket attacks, sandstorms that swallowed entire convoys. But nothing in my military career prepared me for walking into a meeting where complete strangers were deciding what to do with my house because they believed I had been dead for 6 months. 2 years earlier, I left Colorado believing everything back home was secure. My mortgage payments were automatic. My property taxes were paid in advance. Every legal document was stored with my attorney. The only people who knew where I was were my commanding officers and my family. There was absolutely no legal reason anyone could declare me dead, which meant someone hadn't made a mistake. Someone had built an entire lie. And judging by the confident smile on HOA President Rebecca Lawson's face, she believed no one would ever uncover the truth. She was wrong. Very, very wrong. Nobody in that room said a word. The silence was so heavy you could hear the air conditioner humming above us. Rebecca Lawson's hands began to shake. The death certificate slipped from her fingers and landed on the floor. The police officer bent down, picked it up, then looked at my military ID. He compared the photograph, looked back at me, compared it again. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Sir, can you confirm your full name?" "Staff Sergeant Ethan James Brooks, United States Marine Corps." "And today's date?" I answered without hesitation. He slowly turned toward Rebecca. "Mom, I think we have a serious problem." Rebecca forced a nervous laugh. No, there has to be some misunderstanding. We received official paperwork from the county saying he was deceased." I took one step forward. "Really?" She nodded. "The documents were notarized." "Then you won't mind telling me who requested my death certificate?" Her confident smile disappeared. For the first time since I walked into the room, she had no answer. A board member raised his hand. "Rebecca, what's going on?" She quickly replied, "Everyone stay calm. I'm sure this is just an administrative mistake." I shook my head. "No. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned." The room became even quieter. I placed my deployment bag on the conference table and slowly removed a thick black folder. Every important document I'd protected for 2 years was inside. My original property deed, mortgage records, military deployment orders, county tax receipts, insurance renewals, everything. I slid the documents across the table toward the police officer. Every payment was made on time. Every tax was paid. My property was never abandoned. So explain to me, how does a living Marine become legally dead? No one answered. The officer flipped through each page carefully before stopping at one document. His eyebrows narrowed. Rebecca, you told the county there were no surviving relatives. Is that correct? She hesitated. That's what we believed. I reached into my wallet and quietly placed a family photograph on the table. My mother is alive. My younger sister lives 20 minutes from here. My attorney has represented me for 9 years. So either nobody bothered checking, or somebody lied. Several homeowners exchanged nervous glances. One elderly man slowly stood. You told us his family couldn't be located. Rebecca swallowed hard. That's what the paperwork showed. Another woman spoke up. You also said the military confirmed his death. Rebecca looked around the room, realizing the board members were no longer looking at me. They were looking at her. The officer folded the documents and spoke into his radio. I need detectives from the county fraud unit at Willow Creek Community Center. Rebecca's face instantly changed. Fraud unit. The officer nodded. If this man is alive, then someone filed false government records. And that's no longer an HOA issue. That's a criminal investigation. For the first time in nearly 12 years as HOA president, Rebecca Lawson looked genuinely afraid. But what none of us knew was that the detectives were about to uncover something far bigger than a fake death certificate. My house wasn't the only property on Rebecca's list. The first detective arrived less than 20 minutes later. By then, the HOA meeting had completely fallen apart. Nobody cared about voting anymore. The only thing anyone wanted to know was one question. How had a living Marine been declared dead? Detective Laura Bennett placed a thick evidence folder on the conference table before looking directly at me. Staff Sergeant Ethan Brooks? Yes, ma'am. I've already confirmed your identity through the Department of Defense. She slowly turned toward Rebecca Lawson. Which means the death certificate filed with the county is fraudulent. Rebecca immediately stood. I didn't create that document. Detective Bennett remained calm. Maybe not. But someone submitted it using your HOA office computer. The room exploded with whispers. Rebecca's attorney quickly stepped forward. My client isn't answering any more questions. The detective nodded. That's your right. But we're executing a search warrant. 2 investigators entered carrying sealed evidence boxes. One walked straight toward Rebecca's office at the back of the meeting hall. Another disconnected the HOA computer and placed it inside an evidence bag. Rebecca's confident smile was completely gone. She looked terrified. 15 minutes later, one investigator returned holding several blue folders. You need to see this. He spread the files across the conference table. Each folder belonged to a different homeowner. Some were deployed military members. Others were elderly residents living in nursing homes. A few were families temporarily working overseas. Every single file had one thing in common. The owners had been away for months. Detective Bennett opened the first folder. Inside were forged signatures, fake certified mail receipts, fabricated inspection reports, even fake HOA violation notices. Then she opened another, and another. The pattern never changed. Rebecca wasn't just targeting me. She had built an entire system. If someone couldn't immediately defend their property, they became the next target. One elderly homeowner had almost lost his house while recovering from heart surgery. Another Air Force officer had received foreclosure notices while stationed in Germany. A Navy widow had been threatened with eviction after moving in with her daughter during cancer treatment. The room fell silent again. One board member slowly removed his name badge. I voted for every one of these cases. His voice cracked. I trusted you. Rebecca stared at the floor. I was only trying to protect property values. Detective Bennett looked directly at her. No. You were protecting your bank account. She placed several bank statements onto the table. Large deposits. Wire transfers. Cashier's checks. All connected to property sales approved by the HOA. Rebecca's attorney looked stunned. I've never seen these. The detective nodded. We found them in a locked cabinet inside your office. Rebecca finally spoke. I never forced anyone to buy those houses. You didn't have to, Detective Bennett replied. You convinced everyone the owners were gone. Then another investigator hurried into the room carrying a laptop. Detective, we recovered deleted emails. She opened one message. The sender was Rebecca Lawson. The subject line read, Make sure the Marine never comes back. Every person in the room froze. Even Rebecca stopped breathing, because everyone suddenly realized this had never been about HOA rules. It had been a carefully planned conspiracy from the very beginning. The room was completely silent. No one spoke. No one even looked at Rebecca anymore. Every eye was fixed on the laptop displaying the email she had desperately tried to erase. Make sure the Marine never comes back. Detective Laura Bennett slowly closed the screen. Rebecca Lawson, she said calmly. You're under arrest for conspiracy, identity theft, forgery, filing false government records, wire fraud, and attempted theft of real property. Rebecca's attorney stepped forward. My client has the right to remain silent. She does, Detective Bennett replied. But she no longer has the right to walk out of this building. Rebecca suddenly pointed at me. This is his fault. If he had answered the HOA notices. I interrupted her. I never received a single notice. Detective Bennett held up another evidence bag. Because they were never mailed. Inside were dozens of unopened envelopes. Every one of them still carried the HOA office postage meter. The addresses were correct. The stamps were real. But they had never entered the postal system. Rebecca had created fake proof that homeowners ignored official notices while secretly keeping the letters locked inside her office. An investigator placed another box on the table. Inside were forged notary seals, blank property transfer forms, counterfeit county stamps, stacks of forged signatures. The entire fraud operation had been running from the HOA office for years. One elderly board member covered his face. My God! We helped her. Detective Bennett shook her head. You were deceived. But now you'll be witnesses. Rebecca's shoulders finally dropped. For the first time all afternoon, she stopped making excuses. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. As deputies escorted her outside, flashing red and blue lights reflected across the community center windows. Nearly the entire neighborhood had gathered outside. Some people watched in disbelief. Others quietly applauded. One elderly veteran walked over and saluted me. I thought we lost you overseas, he said. I returned the salute. I'm just glad I made it home. 6 months later, a federal court ordered every fraudulent property transfer reversed. Families who had been targeted received compensation. The fake liens were erased. The HOA board was dissolved and replaced under court supervision. Rebecca Lawson accepted a plea agreement that sent her to federal prison. The judge's final words stayed with me long after the courtroom emptied. Power without accountability always becomes abuse. A week later, I unlocked the front door of my house. For the first time in 2 years, finally felt like home again. I carried my deployment bag inside, hung my marine cover beside the front door, then walked onto the porch just as the sun was setting over the neighborhood. The same street where people once believed I was dead, now knew the truth. Some battles are fought on distant battlefields. Others are fought at home against people who think they'll never be held accountable. I survived both, but I'll never forget the moment I walked into that HOA meeting and watched the woman who declared me dead realize the man she buried on paper was standing right in front of her. If you enjoyed the story, let me know in the comments. What shocked you the most? The fake death certificate, the stolen homes, or the email that exposed everything?